ways. We get all angles, all sides, different opinions from all over the world, literally. We just heard from the BBC News. Of course, we get regular updates from NPR and from the WLRN Miami Herald News. Just a couple of reasons why you love this station, why you listen each and every day. This is Caroline Brader-Watts with Andy Wagner and Christine DiMattei, urging you to help us out. We're in the midst of a fall membership campaign. Now's the time to become a member or renew your membership if you love the BBC, if you love the world, if you love Chris's reporting in the afternoons here on the local scene. This is what your money pays for. That's it in a nutshell. 866-247-9576 or online, WLRN.org. And Caroline, not to belabor the point. No, I am going to belabor. Okay, this is it. We can't do this without you. If you want your news, we need you to survive. That's it. And the way that we can survive is by your making your pledge during this pledge drive. The way you do that, very simple. Call 866-247-9576. You can also go online, WLRN.org. And think about when you discovered the station. It might have been through your parents or your friends, or you may have just been surfing the dial, whatever. When you discovered how great public radio was, when you discovered what an oasis of thoughtfulness and contemplativeness and reasoned conversation WLRN and public radio provided, I'm sure you were thrilled, and you made a decision, you made a conscious decision that this was going to be a part of your regular life. Well, if you're going to do that, help support it, help to keep it strong and healthy for all of us here in South Florida. Once again, the number to call is 866-247-9576, 866-247-WLRN, online, WLRN.org, and thanks.
The World is brought to you with support from Audible.com. With over 180,000 audiobooks, Audible is a core tool for anyone seeking to be more productive, better informed, and thoughtfully entertained. You can learn more at audible.com/theworld. And from Lumosity, offering a 10-minute fit test to challenge memory, attention, and problem solving, with brain games to calculate baseline scores and build a personalized brain training program. Performance can be compared to global averages. Learn more at Lumosity.com.
I'm Marco Werman, and this is The World. As journalists, we often hope the work we do has an impact, that it can achieve some kind of justice when it's denied. Reporter and TV producer Ken Dornstein has spent years trying to get to the truth about the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland on December 21st, 1988. All the passengers and crew died. It's a story that's deeply personal for Dornstein. His brother, David, was on that plane. Dornstein's investigation into what happened and who actually perpetrated the bombing is the subject of the three-part Frontline documentary, My Brother's Bomber. And Ken, the final episode of your three-part doc aired this week. 2 days later, we learn that Scottish and American prosecutors are now asking Libya to help them find 2 more suspects in the bombing of Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie. And just a reminder of the history of the case that you followed more closely than perhaps anyone except prosecutors. This news comes after 2 suspects were already brought to trial. One let go, the other, Bill Bassett-McGraw, found guilty, served 10 years, and then a mercy released back to Libya when he was dying of cancer. So I have to ask you first, do you think we'd be hearing this news today were it not for your documentary?
Obviously, I don't know what I don't know about what governments collect and what their investigation has amounted to, but my strong suspicion is we wouldn't be hearing anything about it without the work that I've done in the Frontline film, and the timing is probably not a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, the New York Times, in summing up what was going on with these 2 new suspects, cited your documentary. So, I mean, this is kind of what journalism is supposed to do. You must feel pretty good in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my ambitions were more modest when I set out. I saw an opportunity after many years of unresolved questions to slip over the border into Libya and actually, with a list of names, go talk to people instead of just sort of getting a story that existed on papers that you could never verify. And so this was a moment when the Arab Spring finally spread to Libya and Gaddafi was finally toppled, that I could go in and do some independent reporting. And there's nothing about it that was easy, and there's nothing about it that I could have expected that other reporters or maybe even governments would do if they didn't have real skin in the game, as I did. But I think this week's announcement shows that you actually can find things out if you are persistent and follow the evidence where it leads.
When you say real skin in the game, are you talking about just your own personal connection to the story because your brother was on 103?
Right. I mean, my older brother David was on the flight. He was 25, I was 19, and obviously it had been in my mind to pursue it, and I never could drop it because, unlike other journalists, I did have this personal connection. But when the moment came, I think I wanted to use the tools of journalism, and I wanted, more specifically, I wanted to film the process. I wanted it to be transparent. I wanted to come face to face with someone. I wanted them to be seen on camera because I wanted the story, the simple truth of who did what, to be recorded in a way that people couldn't deny and that would put to rest whatever remaining questions there were.
I mean, you are propelled indeed through the whole narrative of your documentary with this list of 8 suspects, right? And one by one you go down the list, you knock on doors in Tripoli, try to find out what's been overlooked. These 2 suspects have not been named. Were they on your list, and do you think you know who they are?
Yeah, I think, and I think the Washington Post has even confirmed with some unnamed sources that the 2 names are Abdullah Sanusi and Abu Ghila Massoud. Now, the first name, Abdullah Sanusi, is a well-known name for anybody who knows the Gaddafi regime. He was kind of the number 2 person there. He was the head of Libyan intelligence. He has a list of crimes that he's been associated with that involve international cases and probably more significantly crimes against the Libyan people themselves. So they very much wanted him, and he's been long thought to know the truth of Lockerbie at some operational level, and it's been rumored that the U.S. government has sought him out because he's been detained in one form or another for several years, but I don't know that anything came of that. The new part is the other guy, this Massoud, who I believe was the bomb expert in the case. That's the part that my investigation and the Frontline film ultimately focuses on, and that's the part that I think Scottish and American investigators got from me and then have attempted to develop further.
Do you think we will ever really know, at the end of the day, who packed that radio disguised bomb in the suitcase and who checked it in to the Pan Am desk?
Yes, I think I know who it was. I think the last hands on that bomb, the person who connected the wires and potentially pushed the detonator into that pound of Semtex, was Abu Ghila Massoud, this man who I tracked for several years, who is now sitting in a Libyan prison. I think his were the last hands on that device, and I think Abdel Basset al-Megrahi and several other Libyan operatives who were working in Malta, some still unnamed, their names haven't been public, I think they had a hand in getting the suitcase on there. But as an act of mass murder, it's a fairly abstract act, and I've always wondered whether those people who maybe took a suitcase from here to there and put it on a carousel that ended up being transferred to 2 flights onto Flight 103 see themselves as mass murderers. And part of what I wanted to do this entire time was to hear the story from the other side. I know how much it impacted my life and the lives of the other people on that plane and the people on the ground. I wanted to know, did they think twice about what they had done, and did they see themselves as the authors of that act, and what would their reason, their explanation be for why they did it.
So is it over for you, this story? There's a scene at the end where you're taking the pictures off the wall of your office as if something has been concluded.
As a piece of work, I think the Frontline film is what I want to say about it. It's the culmination of a long effort to try to establish something incontrovertible about the bombing. Obviously, I can't drop this. This is not a case I can drop because I do have an investment in it personally. But I think in terms of how I spend my time as a filmmaker, I think it's done. I wrote a book years ago about my brother's life, and I put together his writing, and I talked to people who knew him, and I put it in the form of a book, and I don't do that anymore. And I think the same will happen here. I think I may talk to people may seek me out, but I don't think as a filmmaker it's what I'm going to be working on going forward.
Just the fact that we now live in an age where terrorist acts are so entwined in our lives. How do you feel when you get on a plane? How did you react during the Boston Marathon bombings?
When it comes to planes, I have maybe a somewhat fatalistic view that those things are going to happen, and that I can't spend a lot of time fearing them or thinking about them. What I think of when a terror act happens and I see it in the news, I think of the way in which the story will occupy our minds for a moment, and then we'll move away, and that there are people left behind each one of those acts, and that they're at the start of a kind of maze of grief and frustration and meaning-making out of the whole thing that I'm 25 plus years into, and that they're just beginning, and I have enormous kind of empathy for what lies ahead for them. And if anything that I've done in terms of what I've said or made out of that experience is useful to them, I mean, I'd be happy to hear that. But I know that they've got a long road ahead, and I feel just human compassion for them.
Ken Dornstein, thanks very much for coming in.
Hey, thank you.
You're going to hear my entire conversation with Ken. It's at PRI.org. That's also where you can find links to Ken's 3 episodes of My Brother's Bomber. So, as we just heard, Scottish and American authorities want to question 2 suspects, Abu Aguila Massoud and Abdullah al-Sanusi. But it'll be really hard to get the okay from Libya, because right now numerous people claim to hold power there. That's a word from my colleague Rana Jawad. She's the North Africa correspondent with the BBC.
Libya has more than one authority. They have 4, to be precise, 2 parliaments and 2 cabinets. One parliament and cabinet that's based in the capital, Tripoli. The other government and parliament are based in the east of the country, and they're the ones that are recognized by the international community.
Yes, so with all these claims to being the legitimate government in Libya, who would Scottish and American prosecutors even call if they wanted to cross-examine these suspects, or much less extradite them?
Well, that was the big question. We don't understand, whether they will be having any dealings with the government in Tripoli, because again, they don't recognize the authorities that reside there. So it would be very tricky for them diplomatically, when we, think of international diplomacy, for them to directly engage with the government in Tripoli as an authoritative body that could help them reach those 2 suspects. In any case, I think it would be highly unlikely, no matter who is in power and how accepted they are or recognized by the international community, for Libyans to extradite those 2 named suspects, mainly because particularly when you look at a figure like Abdullah Sanusi, he's no stranger to, I think, a lot of people, not just in Libya, but also across the world. He was the chief of military intelligence under Colonel Gaddafi's rule for many decades, and he is a very controversial and dark figure with a very checkered past, and he is forever going to be seen as the black box of Colonel Gaddafi's time in power. He knows everything there is to know about every atrocity or crime or backdoor dealings the West had with Gaddafi that were allegedly committed during his time in power. So there was always a suspicion that Abdullah Sanusi was a wanted man by a lot of Western governments, and that if they ever got their hands on him, they wouldn't return him back to Libya. And that would be very controversial, not just for any government that's in power there, but also for a lot of people in Libya who want him or who want to see him answer for whatever crimes they feel he committed on home soil.
Yeah, so unlikely that Libya would ever release a Sanusi, that's what you're saying.
Indeed.
I mean, one thing we see in the documentary My Brother's Bomber is just how uneasy a lot of Libyans are about even thinking about Lockerbie right now. Do either of these governments or any Libyans show any inclination to revisiting the whole tragedy?
I think for a lot of Libyans, they recognize the tragedy behind it, and many, will tell you that it's one in a long list of things that they think or believe that Colonel Gaddafi was involved in or bankrolled. But with Lockerbie in particular, I think after Abdel Basit al-Megrahi, the only man who was ever charged with the Lockerbie bombing, after he served his time or some time in Scotland and then released on compassionate grounds, and after his death, a lot of people believed it was now a closed case. And I think generally speaking, given what Libya is going through at the moment and the fact that there is a low-level civil war, people have a lot more on their plate and on their minds to think about than 20-something old cases that at the moment for them doesn't really affect them.
Yeah, I mean, given how chaotic things are in Libya right now, is there any possibility that two suspects would actually prefer extradition? You know, being held in a Scottish or U.S. prison is probably preferable to being held in Libya.
It probably is. We certainly know that Abdullah Snoosi's lawyers have been lobbying for him to be transferred to The Hague. We've seen a couple of videos leaked out of some people getting tortured in these prisons and being mistreated by those who are holding them. So I would imagine, yeah, they would prefer extradition, which is specifically why the Libyans probably won't extradite them.
My BBC colleague Rana Jawad speaking with me from Tunis. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
A little music from Burkina Faso here before the break. The West African country has seen its fair share of turmoil recently, but this week has actually been pretty calm, despite the fact that this week marked the 28th anniversary of a coup d'etat that I witnessed there in 1987. That coup brought down a cherished president, Captain Thomas Sankara. His comrade-in-arms, Blaise Compaoré, denied involvement, but it was he who took the reins of power, and Compaoré stayed in power until the army kicked him out last year, which means this year is the first time the Burkinabe were able to publicly mourn Sankara. But from what I heard, it was really a happy occasion. You can check out a few of my thoughts on Sankara and this year's anniversary at pri.org.
All right. So YouTube's trying to hit me with any copyright they can get. So you're not hearing that song, guys.
17,000 skills like genetics, graphic design, and golf. Curious.com. Grow your skills. Learn more at curious.com/PRI.
Nova Southeastern University offers academic programs to fit any lifestyle. Whether you're applying to college for the first time, advancing or changing careers, NSU has the undergraduate, master's, professional, or doctoral that's right for you. Flexible class schedules online or on campus at the Fort Lauderdale or the Miami campus will help you realize your potential. An NSU degree is closer than you think. Information at 954-262-5566 or nova.edu. Miami-Dade County Auditorium invites you to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Florida Chamber Orchestra with Herencia Cubana. A 55-piece orchestra and an array of invited guests will perform classical and pop music, celebrating the sounds of Cuba, narrated by Pepe Forte with musical maestros Jose Ramon and Marlene Urbay. Herencia Cubana performs this Sunday, October 18th at 5 p.m. Information at 305-547-5414 or MiamiDadeCountyAuditorium.org.
I'm Marco Werman, and you're with The World. There is no doubt the U.S. airstrike on a hospital in Kunduz in Afghanistan nearly 2 weeks ago was a tragedy. 22 people died. The organization which ran the hospital, Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, calls the attack a war crime. The Pentagon is investigating, but MSF says that's not enough. It's formally requested an international investigation by the Geneva-based International Humanitarian Fact-Finding Commission. My BBC colleague Imogen Fuchs is in Geneva. Imogen, I've been in international news for decades and I've never heard of this group. Who or what is the International Humanitarian Fact-Finding Commission?
You wouldn't be the only one. I mean, been a Geneva-based journalist for a very long time and reporting on aspects of international law and the Geneva Conventions for a very long time. And I was there when Doctors Without Borders, MSF, announced that they wanted this, and we were all scratching our heads, what is this? It was set up first in 1977, but being part of the Geneva Conventions needed signatories, didn't come into force until 1991. It is a tiny little body of 15 experts in international law. Some of them are former military lawyers, some of them former human rights lawyers, all based in the Swiss capital, Bern, supported by the Swiss government, which tries to take initiatives on humanitarian issues. But the weird thing about it is, it's never actually been used. It's supposed to investigate violations of the Geneva Convention, things that might happen between two warring parties, that those two warring parties or someone would like investigated. But, as I said, people have completely forgotten about this thing. It's never been used. Nobody has actually ever requested that it be used. Now MSF has stepped into the fray and revived something which was kind of dying a quiet and unnoticed death.
since they've never really been engaged to investigate anything, it's hard to know what they will do with the facts that it finds. But what's a suspicion? Once they do some investigation, what will it do with those facts, and what powers does it have to prosecute and punish individuals and governments?
Well, we have a couple of hurdles to get over first. Although this Humanitarian Fact-Finding Commission is activated, this is kind of international law speak, the United States and Afghanistan have to say, yes, we will go along with this investigation. There's a lot of pressure on Washington to do that, you know? I mean, why not? You said, can they prosecute? No, they can't. This is just an investigative, a fact-finding commission. And its report would remain confidential and released only to the parties fighting. And that would be the United States, Afghanistan, possibly the Taliban.
I mean, my question is, MSF wants justice here. Why would they request this commission to do the investigation, a commission that may not be at all effective?
I think the main thing that MSF wants out of this, and in that sense, perhaps, the aid agency is already starting to succeed. There are rules to wars, and one of the most fundamental and oldest of the Geneva Conventions is that hospitals and doctors and ambulances and medical facilities must not be attacked deliberately. That's a violation of the Geneva Conventions. And Kunduz is just one example. It is happening very often in Syria. It's happening in Yemen. It's happened in the Central African Republic. So what MSF wants is to draw attention to this fact and to have it in the headlines. The very fact that I'm talking to you on a news program about the niceties of international humanitarian law shows that MSF is succeeding. People are reporting on this. It's quite some time since the Geneva Conventions have been debated so thoroughly in the world's media.
My BBC colleague, Imogen Fuchs in Geneva. Thanks very much, Imogen.
You're very welcome.
I'm Marco Werman. We'll be back with more of The World in just a minute. Right now, though, we're asking you to help this station meet the expense of bringing you the news each day. Here's how.
It's a very simple process. I promise you that. It's just calling 866-247-9576, 866-247-WLRN, or online. You can click and join in about just 2 minutes at WLRN.org. Good afternoon to you. Caroline Brader-Watts with Andy Wagner and Christine DiMattei. We are indeed in the midst of our fall membership campaign. If you are thinking you can't afford a donation to this public radio station, I urge you to think again. You can support us at any amount that fits into your budget. It could be $5 a month. That's a great way to become a new member of the station that actually would make you a sustaining member, where you give just a little bit of money each and every month. Supporting NPR news and programs like The World on WLRN, Chris, is easy and it's affordable.
Mm-hmm. You know, Caroline, whenever I'm out in the field and people say, hey, who are you? What do you do? Chris, do public radio, WLRN. Oh my gosh, WLRN, I listen to you guys all the time. You know, it never ceases to amaze me how diverse our audience is. And diversity, this is a word that gets kicked around a lot, but these are people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all cultural, all socioeconomic backgrounds, beginning with my folks, my mom and dad. My dad was a construction worker, a hotel handyman. My mom was a secretary. Avid public radio listeners. It's a community. It really is. It's a community of people who are interested in the world, concerned about their neighborhoods, their little communities. And right now we are asking you to join that community, to join those listeners who support public radio. And you can do that very easily. Your sustaining membership to WLRN makes the public radio community possible, and we need your help during this pledge drive. You can help us out by calling 866-247-9576 with your donation. You can also donate online at WLRN.org.
Yes, you do rely on, on WLRN for the most complete and compelling news and information from all over South Florida, all 4 counties, and we're so pleased to have been able to fill a void that was left in the classical music world recently when we switched our HD channel to an all-classical format, and in just a few days over the weekend, look out for some very exciting news for our listeners in the Palm Beaches. So WLRN responds to the needs of South Florida. We're here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We ask you now to be here for us. With that pledge of support, go online to WLRN.org or call us 866-247-9576.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, in order to keep public radio alive, I have to give some huge amount. I really have to dig deep into my savings account. No, you don't. No, you don't. Many listeners have started giving just a little bit of money to WLRN every month rather than that bigger amount once a year. I mean, it makes all the difference. This is our bread and butter, those folks that give that little tiny bit every single month. Just giving a little bit every month is a very affordable way of doing this to help us out, to support all your favorite programming, making sure that we have the money that it takes to keep bringing this great programming to you, and giving a little money, a little bit every month. Best way to maintain a strong future for WLRN and for these programs you love so much. So that means giving $5, $10, $20 a month, whatever you want. Very easy to donate. You just call 866-247-9576. You can do it online. Very simple. WLRN.org.
And you might get a little goodie for yourself as well. If you make that donation, you're going to be entered into our grand prize drawing, a 6-night vacation for 2 people at the Aqua Wellness Resort in Nicaragua. All the goodies are included: your airfare, your accommodations, your breakfast every single day, $100 spa credit, and so much more. 866-247-9576, online, WLRN.org. And thanks for your support.
The Big Friendly Giant performs at South Miami-Dade Cultural Arts Center Saturday, October 24th. You can enjoy the wacky tales of acclaimed children's author Roald Dahl as his characters come to life with giant puppets in a world of magical adventures. Tickets at smdcac.org.
Arts Ballet Theater celebrates Hispanic heritage October 17th and 18th at the Broward Center, presenting ballets with Latin flavor, including Tarde en la Siesta and Don Quixote. Tickets at browardcenter.org, funded in part by Broward Cultural Division.
I'm Marco Werman. Coming up on The World, we handicap the upcoming Canadian national elections. Here's one candidate.
His nickname is Angry Tom, and he's trying desperately to hide the fact that he's an angry man, so he spent most of the election with a very bizarre smile on his face.
Canadian comedian Rick Mercer talks politics and Blue Jays baseball here on The World.
BBC News. Hungary has defended its decision to seal its border with Croatia from midnight to stem the flow of migrants trying to reach Western Europe. The foreign minister said the failure of European Union leaders to deploy from landing in Greece meant Budapest had to take its own action. Turkey has said the European Union's offer of financial help to ease the migrant crisis is unacceptable. A package of measures was agreed by EU leaders, including speeding up talks on Turkish membership and visa liberalization, as well as financial aid. Syrian government forces backed by Russian airstrikes and allied militias have opened a new offensive against rebels south of the city of Aleppo. Reportedly made some gains, but the rebels are fighting back strongly. The United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has strongly condemned a Palestinian arson attack on a Jewish shrine near the town of Nablus. In a statement at the start of a council meeting on the escalating violence between Israelis and the Palestinians, Mr. Ban called for those behind what he called a reprehensible attack to be brought to justice. The German Football Federation has that it used bribes to secure the 2006 World Cup. The Federation said the accusations made by the news magazine Der Spiegel were completely baseless. The magazine, which did not identify, alleged that a slush fund of about $6 million was used to get votes of some FIFA Executive Committee members to secure the tournament. The European and Russian space agencies are to send a landing craft to the moon to assess the viability and human settlement. The unmanned mission, called Luna 27, is due to launch in 5 years' time. It'll head for the south pole of the moon, where it'll drill into the surface to assess how much water is available.
The World is brought to you by Public Radio International and by Soundworks.org, offering perspectives on events and cultures around the globe with the World's Daily Podcast and the Studio 360 Podcast. Subscribe at Soundworks.org or iTunes.
I'm Marco Werman, and you're with The World. We're a co-production of the BBC World Service, PRI, and WGBH here in Boston. Our next story traces an unlikely path from Thailand to Finland. stick with me here. Each year, a few thousand Thais, mostly farmers and fishermen, leave their rice fields and fishing boats. They head north, 5,000 miles north, all the way to the Arctic Circle. And as Ray Ellen Bichelle reports, it's all because of berries.
In northern Finland, some 15 miles inside the Arctic Circle, a half-dozen Thai men walk through marshy, mossy forest, eyes to the ground. They're dressed like colorful bank robbers with knitted face masks to keep the biting flies and mosquitoes away. With each scoop through the moss comes a thump of berries hitting the bottom of the 20-gallon buckets they lug on their backs. Cloudberries, bilberries, and lingonberries.